I'm sure that as a child you've tried to speak in code with your best friend, or with your brother or sister. It was probably something very simple, like adding pa to the beginning of every word, or writing them backwards, or placing them vertically. Pa and pa you, pa thought, pa that, pa nobody, pa would, pa understand, pa you. How innocent we were. There were even some girls in my class who learned sign language to communicate with each other without the rest of us understanding it. Now that I think about it, with a little more effort, they could have been good spies. But we're not going to talk about how frustrated I was not knowing what they were saying, or how you used a sign language with your friends, where, depending on the position of the pencil, it was a multiple choice answer for copying. Let's talk about something similar, but outside of a delinquent school environment. Let's talk about fictional languages. Yes, deep down, everything you were doing to try to deceive your teacher or classmates was creating a very simple cipher language. Maybe on occasion it helped you write a note about who your crush was, but when we talk about any audiovisual medium, fictional languages are used for much more than just reading love notes between Kojima and Norman Reedus. The most important of these is to provide richness and realism to the world in question, but they are also often used to hide subplots, give clues to the viewer, to sign, send their own messages breaking the fourth wall, or even to avoid censorship. Surely the most famous examples are found in film and literature. Klingon from Star Trek, Parseltongue from Harry Potter, Dothraki from Game of Thrones, Rilehian from Lovecraft, all of Tolkien's. He created, to a greater or lesser extent, the Dwarves' rune language, the Black speech of Mordor, the language of the Ents, that of the Númenóreans, the Common Tongue, and the 3 languages he created for the Elves. Yes, 3! The ancestral one as if it were our Latin, and the 2 that evolved from it, all as complex languages with its declensions, exceptions, and all that stuff. No one can beat Tolkien. But there are countless fictional languages that are not so obvious, so that many of you have probably not noticed. Did you know, for example, that in Star Wars there is Huttese? Or Ewok? Or that in Avatar the Na'vi also have a language that fans have been expanding and now has thousands of words? Or that in Disney's Atlantis movie the Atlanteans have a script with real and translatable meaning? Even the minions have a simple but structured and translatable language. The damn minions! What? The Furbies also have a language with dozens of words? That's it, I'm out. This video seemed like a good idea, but to hell with it. Anyway, as I was saying, in any fantasy universe there's likely a fictional language just waiting for someone to translate it. Or maybe they are just cool looking letters that were created to look alien but have no real meaning. That happens too. And of course, in video games we weren't going to be any less, and in some cases we may have nothing to envy of the world famous ones. Except Tolkien. I repeat, no one can beat Tolkien. With the obligatory introduction out of the way, let's get to what really interests us: fictional languages in video games. Imagine you've created your own video game, one that takes place in a post-apocalyptic world where penguins are the dominant race and have enslaved humans to work in their moonstone hamburger mines. You'd want the penguins, whose intellect is far superior to that of the cats that currently enslave us, to be able to speak their own language or even have an entire culture in their language, right? But of course, you have no idea how to do it. Don't worry, today we'll look at different examples so you can create the fictional language that best suits the tastes of those wonderful flightless birds, and apparently our new gods. To begin with, I would say that in general, to create a fictional language at a, let's say, basic level, all you need is to know a little bit about cryptography. Basically, what you are going to do is encode your own language so that through a set of different characters or pronunciations it cannot be read by someone who doesn't know how it works. There are dozens of cryptographic techniques you can use to create your own coded language. Substitution, binary, Caesar cipher, steganography, writing it backwards, using a font like Windings, a Skitally, Alberti cipher, mixing any of them. I don't know, you can even decide to use the letter to the right of your keyboard. Anything you can think of as an encryption algorithm is valid. But don't worry, if you can't think of anything, I'll show you the most typical examples when creating your own fictional language and a couple of slightly more complicated ones. Although, well, you can always be lazy and use Morse code or Braille, like Pokémon, or simply redraw the letters, like Pokémon. In general, the most used method is pure substitution, in which we create our own alphabet and replace letter by letter what would be the alphabet of our own language, or simply do it within the alphabet itself, either randomly or with, for example, a Caesar cipher. There are many examples of this practice in the world of video games, and usually, so that people can translate it, a character appears reading a phrase in it.
What do these symbols mean?
Can't read Lombax either, huh? Sorry. It says, in this room, a secret born, to quell the angry Cragmite storm. You've traveled far, but to be clear, without a tale, your quest ends here.
Or a Rosetta Stone containing a sentence that uses the entire alphabet can be introduced into the game. Let's look at a few examples of simple substitution, such as the Zonai and Lombax languages and their evolutions in the Ratchet & Clank saga, the precursor writing in Jak and Daxter, Fez. In the Zelda saga, there are a few, such as the different Hylian alphabets, the Gerudo language, or the Sika language. We can also see it in Final Fantasy X with the Albert language, the Covenant language in Halo, the Saurian language in Star Fox Adventures, the one that appears in A Hat in Time, Minecraft, or the Daedric language in Skyrim. To make it more interesting, you can do as the last one, which, although it is a simple substitution, each character has its own pronunciation totally different from English or Spanish. And if you want it to be read and be minimally pronounceable, the most common thing is to exchange vowels on the one hand and consonants on the other. The next level would be to add something more to that substitution or do it in a slightly more complicated way than simple letter by letter. We have, for example, the Dragon language in Skyrim, which, apart from a simple substitution, has some characters that represent syllables, and then their combinations are words with their own meaning. Fush Ro Da, for example, means force, balance, push. We can take this further and do a syllable-for-syllable substitution always, as in the ancient and modern Hylian syllabary of the Zelda saga, based on the Japanese Kana syllabary. Or, for example, the one used by Yorda in ICO, whose runic language consists of a triple encoding. To write in it, we first have a word in our language, and we translate it to Japanese Romaji, which is a more romanized version of it. Then, we turn it around, and now we apply a substitution in which, one by one, each letter is represented by a drawing of a word in English that begins with that letter. For the A, we have end, for the B, we have bird, and so on except for the I, which is an I because of its pronunciation, the same as the letter. In Shadow of the Colossus and The Last Guardian, there are also fictional languages derived from a Latinized Japanese, but they don't have a runic language like ICO. All three of them use a conversion tool created by Ueda to obtain similar but different languages. Going back to simpler methods different from substitution, we can simply translate it to another language and reverse it, as they did in the Spanish version of Zelda Mini's Cap, where the Mini's language is basically Japanese in reverse, although in other versions it is simply the language itself reversed. Another simple practice would be to simply invent words and give them meaning, as in the Sims language, or Simlis. I don't like this one very much, because it doesn't really contribute much to the community, but I guess it's valid nonetheless. There are many other techniques, and you can use anything you can think of and leave it in the comments. But if you give these videos some love in the form of subscriptions and likes, in future videos I will show you a couple more complex fictional languages from other video games, like TUNIC and Pokémon, and how they are used to hide lore and enrich their worlds, as we already saw in my Abyssal Ruins video. If you are on this channel, I'm sure you're going to love them. Thank you very much for your time, and see you in the next video.